Now that the malicious file has been downloaded onto David's machine, the attacker will take a look at the network, computer, and user account information on this machine. There are several different tools an attacker can use at their disposal, and in this particular case, the attacker wants to view local user information, including computer accounts on this machine. There could be the possibility of a local administrator which they could log into and then move into a more valuable workstation or machine, such as a business server. One method to accomplish this attack is through what they call credential dumping, which attempts to gain login information by breaking password hashes. Now, you may be wondering, what's a password hash? Well, hashing is the method of transformation on a clear text password. Hashing is a one-way function, meaning you can't reverse the function. So instead of storing a password in clear text on the computer, hashing will convert the password into a random sequence of characters. In order to generate the same sequence of characters, you must supply the correct password. A tool used to achieve credential dumping is called Mimikatz. Mimikatz can expose password hashes stored on a machine. Then those hashes can be copied and then exposed by a hash cracking tool. You can use this supplied information to go ahead and log in as the user and password. Located on the desktop here is Mimikatz. Now, in a real-world scenario, an attacker would not install this directly onto a computer or desktop. This would be quickly prevented by an antivirus software. In this case, it would be Microsoft Defender, which is the built-in AV software, and it has been disabled in our environment. So in a real-world scenario, the attacker would obfuscate or make the Mimikatz program unclear to the AV software so that it wouldn't recognize Mimikatz. This can be accomplished through string manipulation or changing the contents of Mimikatz to look like a real software program, but the underlying functionality is still the same. For the sake of simplicity, I've disabled Microsoft Defender and downloaded Mimikatz directly onto the desktop. Let's gather all the usernames and passwords of this machine through the Security Account Manager, or SAM. SAM is the database used to store user accounts and security descriptors for users on the local computer in a Windows environment. So transitioning over to our virtual machine, this is where you can follow along within this exercise. As you can see here, of course, we already have the Mimikatz program installed, and like I've highlighted, this would be ran in the background through the attacker-controlled C2 framework. For the time being, we are just going to keep this very simple and just say that this is where Mimikatz will be run. Our first order of action is to ensure that Mimikatz can run in this environment. Like I've said before, Windows Defender has been disabled, but sometimes it acts a little differently with different VM environments, and so go ahead and right-click and run Mimikatz as an administrator, and then click Yes. If you see this prompt here, you're good to go. Now, if you don't see this prompt or the entire logo has been disabled, that is okay. We can go ahead and re-enable Mimikatz on our environment by going over to Windows Security. All right, so once Windows Security has opened, you're going to go over to Settings, and then you're going to go to Protection History. Now, in this case, you're probably going to see some of the same alerts that you see on my screen, or you may not. It really just depends. The way to re-enable Mimikatz in this case is going to be clicking on one of these alerts, enabling it to say yes, and there's going to be an Actions button down below. So for instance, on this alert, you're going to see an Actions right here, and you're either going to click Allow, or it's going to say Quarantine Item. In this case, if you go ahead and click the Quarantine Item, you're going to go up to Filters, and you're going to go to Quarantine Items. You're probably going to see some other alerts. And you're going to want to go ahead and click Allow. There's going to be a little Actions button down here. Now, you may be thinking, this is great, but, which alerts do I do this to? And the general advice I can give you is to go ahead and just do it for all of the alerts. But take a look at the particular date that you are following this lecture at, and it will usually be within that timestamp. So for instance, if you're doing this on the 15th of January at 12:55, there's going to be a new alert. You don't need to worry about any of these. So that is my basic method for getting Mimikatz back re-enabled. Now, if this hasn't worked, you can go ahead and message me on the Udemy dashboard, and I will make sure to get back with you. But hopefully by now you have Mimikatz back re-enabled on the desktop, or it's been enabled this entire time. Our next order of action is to go ahead and get the Security Account Manager files. In this case, there's going to be 2. So let's go ahead and go over to our command prompt shortcut here. We're going to right-click it and run as an administrator. And then go ahead and select yes. The command prompt allows us to interact with our file system similar to the way that you would act with the Windows Explorer here. So, you usually interact with the desktop or maybe your downloads folder. Well, in this case, it's just a text way of doing it. So right now we're in C Windows System 32. Let's go ahead and grab these files. And in this case, I've looked up 2 that are of particular importance. And to do this, we're going to go ahead and proceed to go to that file location. So in this case, what we're going to do is supply cd space, and then go ahead and supply the following file path. So it's going to be c:\users David with a lowercase desktop, and then go ahead and press enter as you see here on the screen. Now we are into that file location. Perfect. Let's go ahead and supply our reg save command and get those 2 files that I talked about. So in this case, it's going to be reg save, which is a registry command, hklm /sam backup.hiv. You can see the operation has completed successfully. We're going to do the same for the second file. And you can pause this video and supply these if you want to, if you're following along. In this case, it's going to be system instead of SAM. And like I said, we're just going to hit enter, and the operation has completed successfully. Now, as you can see, we have 2 files. Perfect. This is what we wanted to do. So for the time being, let's go ahead and exit out of our command prompt. And now we're ready to go into Mimikatz. Okay, so let's go to our Mimikatz icon here. And again, we're going to right-click on this case and go to Run as Administrator again. Choose Yes. And here we have another command prompt similar to the one that we just were interacting with. The first thing that we need to do is go ahead and elevate our privileges. To do this, we're going to go ahead and supply the following 2 commands. Perfect. So you're going to see 2 things. You're going to see a privilege 20 OK, and then this output here. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and log our output, which is this output here, onto a file. In this case, it's just going to be a simple text file so that we can go through it in a moment here, and I'll show you what I mean. So just for right now, just do log hash.txt. The last step we need to do is go ahead and supply this following command, which will go ahead and take a look at the system backup and the SAM file and see if we can get and crack those hashes or expose them. To do this, do lsa dump ::SAM and then supply system backup.hiv, and we can do the other file as well. Hit enter, and you're going to see all this output to our screen. That's perfect. And now we can go ahead and look through this output, either through our command prompt here, or if we go to our text file, you're going to see it in our text file as well. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and look for 2 particular things in this file. All right, the first order of action is to go back to our desktop and right-click, and then select New Text Document. And we can call this whatever. In this case, I'm just going to call this username-hashes. We're going to go ahead and double-click this to open it. Now, we're going to go and do a little split screen here in this case. And the first thing we want to do is scroll all the way back up with our hash output. And so to look at this in a very basic sense, we can see that there is a username called administrator guest defaults in this WDA utility account. These are some of the default accounts that Windows supplies within their system. Now, in addition to this, if we start scrolling down, you can see that we have a user called David. Well, that we know, of course, is our financial analyst. And here is a hash NTLM, and there's the following hash. If we keep going down here, we can see that there's also another local user. And in this case, it's Jared Admin. So this isn't a default account supplied through Windows. This is one that we created. And as you can see, there is also another hash. Now, if we go ahead and copy the following output and paste it into our file here and then press enter, we're going to go ahead and do this for the hash as well. And then go ahead and do enter again, and we'll do this with Jared Admin as well. Copy. And let's copy this here. Perfect. If you take a particular look at these hashes, you can see that they're exactly the same. So what this implies here, well, these could be the same passwords, but let's go a step further and actually see if these are passwords and if we can expose them. So let's save this file, and the next step is to go to our browser. Now, I went ahead and bookmarked a resource onto our Firefox browser here, and in this case it's called CrackStation Online. This is a hash cracker. What we can do here is go ahead and add our hashes into this output box here, and we're just going to do both. Now, of course, I'm thinking that these are going to be the same, but let's just see. Do enter. We want to make sure to supply these on different lines. Select the I'm not a robot, and then go ahead and select the correct hashes. And as you can see here, it automatically identifies that these are NTLM hash types, and here is our password, which of course you knew David's password, but we didn't know Jared's, and we suggested that, well, it is the same. So in this case, an attacker could use the local admin account and perhaps move laterally, which means go into a different machine on the network and start doing the same process over and over again until they get to perhaps a more valuable resource, such as a server. And this server could contain a database full of passwords, or that could just lead into a whole nother level of triage. And that is the basis of the credential dumping attack, something that's super simple to do and yet very effective